This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Have you been following the state Supreme Court races? If not, you're not alone. And The Stranger's Natalie Graham is here to explain why it's a big deal this year. Welcome, Natalie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Natalie also recently wrote about Washington's public defender crisis. And we're going to talk about that. Plus, contributor Chase Hutchinson, critic and journalist, is going to give us the latest on arts and culture news in town. Hi, Chase.
Hello.
But first, it's our spring membership drive. So if you've thought about becoming a CityCast Seattle neighbor, now is a great time to join us. One of the biggest priorities for our team is creating community and keeping our neighbors informed. And what I get most excited about is getting together with y'all in real life and having conversations about what you care about. We've got a bunch of ideas in the works right now for future members-only events like walking tours and craft nights. So if you join us for $10 a month or $100 a year, you'll get an invite. So if that piques your interest, join us at membership.citycast.fm/Seattle. Okay, now on to today's show. So, Natalie, you wrote about the crisis brewing among Washington's public defender system. Let's start at like the very, very beginning. For folks who might not know what a public defender does, can you describe what their job is?
I sure can. I had to learn about this myself. A public defender, they defend people who cannot afford an attorney. So when you hear that classic Miranda rights line, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. That's who's provided for you. And our state is kind of weird in how we do public defense. It's sort of like somebody at the Office of Public Defense described it to me as your grandmother's quilt. And so that quilt is comprised of 39 counties, and each of the 39 counties in Washington has its own public defense system, and they have their own public defense defender. And those counties are who are primarily responsible for funding public defense. And this is an outlier for most of the states in the nation. I believe we are one of 5 states that mostly funds public defense through local control, which means that the state does not fund much of public defense. I believe that right now the state only funds 6% of public defense in Washington.
Huh. And so the rest is up to the county to try and fund.
Yeah. What's weird about it, too, is that the county executives don't actually control that budget. The prosecutor's office does in the county. So it's like this really strange web of like who's making the decisions and who's giving the money and who's impacted.
Yeah. So what is going on right now that is making it hard for folks to do their job?
So if you talk to anybody who's in this world, they'll say that we've been in a public defense crisis for decades. We just have not funded it properly ever because of all that stuff I just mentioned. And then right now we're in this kind of pressure cooker moment because, well, budgets are bad across the board. And then also because the Washington State Supreme Court made a decision this past December that lowers caseload standards for public defenders. That means that public defenders who are traditionally overworked can no longer take an obscene amount of cases. So that means we have fewer attorneys seeing the same amount of cases.
Gotcha. I mean, is that overall a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I can kind of see it being a good thing in that we don't want these folks to be burning out all the time, but also it seems like that leaves a lot of cases in the pipeline, right?
Oh, it's a really good thing for public defenders, and it's a good thing to attract people to this profession because burnout is a huge issue. And if you are an overworked, overburdened public defender, you can't give every person the best attention. You can't give the best care to each client. So overall, this is a good thing if we had the funding or the support system in place to back up these public defenders, to support them while they're taking fewer cases. That would be ideal. And so that is kind of why the state Supreme Court is not requiring full implementation right away. So the state Supreme Court gave a 10-year timeline to all these public defense organizations to get on the right track and to reduce their caseloads by, I believe what the caseload standards are now, or like the threshold we're trying to get down to, is about a third of what public defenders see on average right now.
Dang. Okay. So wait, what's going to happen to all those cases?
There's
we just need to hire a bunch more people? Is that the deal?
100%. Yeah, no, totally. And then there's this whole issue of, are there public defenders out there who can come into an organization and fill that need? A lot of people I talked to said, well, attorneys don't just grow on trees. And I love talking to lawyers. But yeah, so you want an attractive position. You want better pay rate. You want fewer caseloads to attract people into a public defense organization. And that's happening in King County. So the King County Department of Public Defense started reducing their caseloads this past July before the Supreme Court issued this decision. So King County has been doing this for not quite a year, and they've been able to attract a lot of attorneys, a record number of attorneys, because they're able to offer good pay and offer a work-life balance that has not really existed in this realm before.
Yeah, and speaking to lawyers in general, I think King County is just a more attractive place within the state of Washington, just because it does seem like there are more resources, and then also, you know, you've got the plus of just general quality of life living in a bigger place, which a lot of lawyers might find attractive. I mean, Chase, have you heard of any of this?
Yes, I had read the story, and I would say everyone should go read the story, as it's a
That's
very
right.
well-reported,
Do it.
thorough story that gets at kind of those like complicating factors of systems without like anyone sort of being negligent, just still not working in the way that can create negative outcomes for everyone. And now the clock is ticking for those 10 years that I think people seem optimistic. I think in the story it said everyone's kind of trying to be glass half full about it. But also, 10 years is not a long time for things to really substantively change as well.
One question I wanted to ask you, Natalie, is the root of the problem our weird state policy, or is there also an element here of how the incentive structure for public defenders works? Like, I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot of former classmates of mine, friends of friends, go through law school with the best of intentions. Some of them start out as public defenders because they want to serve the public. And then, you know, it's like they come into this underfunded system. And I feel like, you know, there are a lot of states in which that system is underfunded for public defenders. And then they just like go into corporate law because they've got loans to pay and they just want better work-life balance. And I guess it seems like part of it here is, you know, the state trying to address this long-standing issue. But I wonder also how much of it is the system for public defenders, period.
I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. It sounds like nobody's really figured this out nationwide. And, you know, what's really interesting, I think to push back a little bit, I think you said that the state is trying to fix this. That actually is kind of the whole issue, is that the state isn't. So this last legislative session, the legislature had the opportunity to bake in funding for public defense into the millionaire's tax, and that didn't go through. And so now we're in a worse off position than we would have been if that funding was there. And counties have actually sued the state, and they are suing the state for abdicating this constitutional duty to fund public defense. And it could turn into another McCleary decision. And if listeners don't know, the McCleary decision is the state Supreme Court ruling from 2018 that basically held the state accountable for not funding public education. Whether or not that has actually worked is up for debate, but a similar thing could be happening with public defense in the next year or so, depending on when this case goes to trial. And when it goes to trial is up in the air because the Thurston County Superior Court is underfunded.
Ah, fun. It all comes back around. Yes, I misspoke. I should not have said the state. I guess I should say people within our state are trying to work on this.
Okay.
But I mean, when I read about that lawsuit, I was thinking, man, how bad do you have to mess up for like all the lawyers to sue you? It's going to be an interesting case for sure. Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, let's talk about the other side of that system. We're going to talk about judges. Hey, Liam, have you ever been to the Washington State Spring Fair?
Hey, Jane, I haven't, but I'm looking at the website and it looks pretty fun.
Are your kids into seeing animals?
Oh my God. The constant debate in this house is what's the best animal.
What about carnival games?
Yeah, I think they could be convinced.
What about festival rides?
Oh, yeah, I want to do that.
And, okay, my favorite, eating too much funnel cake.
Oh, I'm already doing that.
I'm also super excited that they're doing a monster truck rally and a demo derby.
Wow, that's extremely you.
So if you want to pop down to Puyallup the weekend of April 10th to 12th or 17th to 19th, you can get your tickets at www.thefair.com. And kids under 5 are always free, so you can bring the whole family. When I first moved to Seattle, Town Hall was my lifeline to the city. I went to book talks, panels with interesting local thinkers, and even a concert. If you're looking for something fun to do or to learn something new, you'll find something going on nearly every night of the week with events spanning civics, science, and arts and culture. Town Hall is a nonprofit with a mission to amplify ideas, foster civil discourse, and connect people through events. And what I love most about Town Hall is that their events are produced by and for the community. Tickets to most events are offered on a sliding scale with free tickets for people under 22. And if you haven't been, they're located in a vibrant historic building on First Hill. And on Saturday, April 18th, author Maria Semple discusses her new novel with Jeopardy champ and host Ken Jennings. You can get tickets and view the full calendar of events at townhallseattle.org. So, Natalie, you also recently wrote about the upcoming Supreme Court races here in Washington. You quoted one justice as saying, judicial elections are low information exercises. And I totally agree. Like, every time it becomes judge election season again, I'm thinking to myself, why do we vote on judges? I don't know anything about these judges.
I don't actually have an answer for you as to why we vote for our state Supreme Court judges, or actually all of our judges. We're voting for all judges, and that is strange. Nobody is really paying attention to the judicial branch, and you don't know who. Can you name any state Supreme Court justices right now?
I'm embarrassed to say no. Chase.
No way.
Okay, to me, it feels like voting for a judge is similar to the whole like Tim Eyman advisory vote situation, where you're like, okay, so it feels like this might already be kind of a done deal, but I don't really know what the background here is, and nobody is really giving me much information about this.
Yeah, I don't know the merits of voting for judges versus not, but this is a good case study of not really anybody knows what the state Supreme Court is doing and who they are. And so when they run for election, a lot of voters are just sort of guessing. A lot of voters choose who they want to elect based off of which name sounds better, which opens up a lot of racial undertones. And then a lot of people just don't vote, which I guess maybe if you don't know anything about the race, not voting is okay. But normally that can be okay because we've got maybe 1 or 2 state Supreme Court justices up for election at one time. But this year, something unprecedented is happening, which is that there are 5 state Supreme Court justices on the ballot this year. There are only 9 justices. So that is a full majority of the state Supreme Court that voters will be electing this fall.
Dang. Okay, so it's like a complete changing of the guard, basically. Like who we vote in could really be the majority for any future decision.
Yeah. And so this is happening now because there's only actually one person who's running who is like genuinely up for re-election. Everyone else is retiring and then they're leaving an open seat. or they've retired and the governor appointed judge who filled their position is now having to run for election. So we've got all these factors that are bringing an unprecedented Supreme Court election.
So I know that other states, like I think California specifically is the one that I know the best because that is where I lived before I moved to Washington. There, the governor just appoints the judge. And here, it seems like, you know, when there's a vacancy, that person becomes appointed, but then later has to run for their seat, which I think is interesting because it still gives them a leg up, I imagine, in the election to say, like, hey, I've already served in this role. And now, like, we're just trying to make it official for another round. But tell me who is up for election this year. Like, what do you all know about the candidates? So specifically, Natalie, you wrote about someone named David Shelby, and there's something T-Rexes and kangaroos. So I want to know if this is a good space guy of the Washington Supreme Court race.
Yeah, this guy. I think that is a really fair comparison. I wouldn't call him a serious contender. He has run for several state Supreme Court positions before. And if you go to his website, it's really text heavy. But he has one section about the similarities between T-Rexes and kangaroos. And, you know, as the science goes, because a kangaroo can jump, T-Rexes must have also been able to because they both have short arms.
Okay, can I read you this line? It says, although I am not a scientist, I agree with other non-scientists who have said that there is circumstantial evidence of remarkable similarities when comparing the skeleton of a T-Rex to a kangaroo. Okay. All right, well, moving on.
So, yeah, that is one guy. That's one guy who people could just pick because they're like, yeah, I like the name David.
Yeah, right.
Who else is running? Such a good question. But there is one interesting one. Actually, there's several interesting ones. But of the interesting ones, the appointee who filled Justice Mary Yu's seat is Justice Colleen Melody, who was appointed by Bob Ferguson. She was the former chief of the Civil Rights Division in the Washington State Attorney General's office. Seems like a solid pick. She'll have to run to retain that seat. And she's just been challenged by Scott Edwards, who is an anti-tax attorney. And he seems to be affiliated with this group called Full Court Press. And Full Court Press is this nonprofit that was started by former Attorney General Rob McKenna to sort of groom conservative candidates to run for these races. There's a lot of weird basketball metaphors mixed in.
I was going to say full court press, huh? Okay.
Yeah, there's like a basketball hoop and the people on the board are called the coaches and it's terrible. But this has been around for years. And while they did not respond to a request for comment, what we can assume is that they have been readying themselves for this moment. And the filing deadline is not until the first week of May. So there is still time.
Okay, so there could be people who are going to enter the race
It's a little too soon to talk
Yeah.
exactly about like who is who and that sort of thing. Republicans have had pretty much no luck controlling one of the branches of state government. Any of the branches of state government. And this seems to be a ripe opportunity for them to do that because they have a lot of money. These are low information races. They are statewide races. It takes a lot of money to inform that amount of voters about who you are. And there is a huge disadvantage for progressives here because historically progressives don't have these war chests of millions of dollars to wield.
Chase, what is your approach when you're having to vote for a judge?
I mean, I will try and do some research. I try and dig
Read
into
The
it.
Stranger, maybe?
Read The Stranger. I was going to say, listening to all of this, it feels like that's even more value for reporting that gets into the weeds, that has kind of done the work for you. So I look forward to reading those endorsements that are coming up, the other reporting, hopefully, because otherwise you're going to have kind of an information gap a little bit. And that's where I think you could have some folks sneak in.
This is why I love voting by mail. It's like you just do your own little study hall. You got your little laptop open. You got like all the tabs. You're like Googling the candidates. You've got the stranger endorsements open. Maybe you have the Seattle Times endorsements open. Maybe you're comparing them and thinking, who seems to have a view that I more align with? And I feel like, if we were to have to move to a not mail-in ballot situation, you have even less time to be getting the information that you want before casting your vote. Well, okay, so we have, like Natalie said, until May before we even hear about the full slate of candidates. And the election, the primary, is in August. So I think I said this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the primaries. Mark your calendars. It's August 4th, which is like prime. Everyone is out of town or like running around being little summer people. So don't miss out.
That's the beauty of the mail-in ballot, right?
Yes. You get it early. You turn
get
it in
mid-July.
early.
You'll get it.
Yes. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back, let's talk about arts and culture news. If you're in Washington and you haven't tried King Harvest hummus yet, you're missing out on a locally made favorite. Since 1977, King Harvest Hummus has been making their small batch, fresh hummus in Portland, Oregon. It's not like an average hummus. It's a thicker texture combined with bold flavors, and it creates raving fans after tasting it. Not surprising, since it's made local and fresh on the shelf. Some of our favorite flavors are roasted red pepper, jalapeno, sun-dried tomato, and of course, the classic. You can eat this healthy dip with chips, veggies, or add it to a sandwich or wrap. Or maybe you just want to eat it with a spoon. Most people buy more than one because once it's open, this healthy dip disappears fast. You've got to try it to love it. Don't miss out on expanding your snack experience with this locally made fresh dip. King Harvest Hummus. Simple, better, one dip at a time. You can find King Harvest in the refrigerated section at your local grocery store.
Hey y'all, it's Ashley, the executive producer here at CityCast Seattle. We're in our spring membership campaign, and we have something really special for new neighbors who join over the next 2 weeks. You've probably seen Oxford pennants around town, or maybe on Instagram. They are beautiful. They're American made and just the coolest thing. They're from this company called Oxford Pennant, and this spring they made one just for us, just for Seattle, as a celebration of everything we love about our city. It's this really beautiful bluish green color. It's teal-ish, very close to our CityCast Seattle teal. And it has Seattle on it, of course, front and center, plus a little Mount Rainier icon. And it says, "I live here on purpose." Because we do. These pennants are handcrafted and designed specifically for CityCast Seattle, so you're not going to find these anywhere else. You can hang it at home or at your office, basically wherever you want to remind yourself and everyone around you that you love this city with all its quirks and delights, and you want to be part of making it better. And when you become a CityCast Seattle neighbor, you're also getting ad-free listening, invitations to members-only events, and so much more. It's $10 a month or $100 a year, and it goes directly to supporting this show and the team of locals who make it. Some of my favorite people in all of Seattle, but I'm a bit biased. Join before April 24th to get the pennant at membership.citycast.fm/Seattle. That's membership.citycast.fm/Seattle. And we'll see you around the neighborhood.
We're back with contributor Chase Hutchinson for our weekly feature, Cut to the Chase, where Chase is going to tell us about the latest arts and culture news. So I think the big thing that I imagine you're excited about, Chase, is that the SIFF 2026 festival lineup just dropped. Air horns, whoa, 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 whoa. I believe The Stranger and CityCast are both media sponsors of the SIFF festival. Loved supporting the arts. Tell us what you're excited about on that lineup.
Well, the thing I would recommend first going to do is read the Stranger piece, where I broke down some of like the kind of initial highlights that we were burning the midnight oil doing.
Yeah, I edited that.
I know. I was going to say,
dream team here.
And I realized that it was all docs, which is like both good, but also a sign of like, oh, interesting. But I would recommend powwow people which was shot entirely in Seattle from a local filmmaker. We've talked about Ghost in the Machine, which was at Sundance, that is now coming here. We talked about Phoenix Jones. But the thing I don't think we got to talk about much is The Life We Leave, which is the documentary about human composting, and Washington State being one of the, I believe, the first state to legalize human composting, and
Correct.
one of the first companies kind of starting that out, and a profile of the journey that the founder goes on and how he initially is very excited to shake things up in the death industry, but then also has to come face to face with the reality that when business is booming and he's doing well, more and more people are having the worst experience of their life. And it becomes kind of this moving confrontation with that that's very frank about death in a way I've never really seen in a documentary. And I thought really something special. And I had heard that this was coming, and so I was glad to see it confirmed yesterday. But that's just a small tip of the iceberg. There's many a things. There's many a paths that I'll be digging into more and more as we get closer.
God, I feel like back in 2017, maybe 1,000 years ago, I did an event with a death doula and Katrina Spade, who founded Recompose, one of those companies, where we're just talking about death and what to do to get ready for it and why it's just a natural part of life. And I could definitely see how a documentary would get into some very deep and touching philosophical territory very quickly, because it is something as a culture we really try and put on the back burner for as long as possible for understandable reasons. But and it's very cool that Washington is like really a leader in thinking about how to do things in a more eco-friendly way, but also one that aligns with people's big picture values of, like what role they want to have in the world. I'm really excited about opening night.
Yes.
I know that SIFF is having an event where they are screening
I Love Boosters.
I'm obsessed with Poppy Liu, so
Ooh,
I
she
gotta
has
go.
a fun part in this. Okay.
Yeah,
I can't say anything, but she's
Oh, okay.
good.
You've seen it. Chase has seen everything.
I know, I'm sorry. Well, this one was at South by and was kind of the big opening night, blow the doors off of the festival at South by, and I imagine it will similarly do so here because it's directed by Boots Riley, who made Sorry to Bother You, which had played at the fest, and it is a maximalist wild ride of a movie and very openly kind of anti-capitalist, like borderline sci-fi at a point that I can't talk about, and makes use of like stop motion animation and all these other formal shifts.
Hell yeah.
It's really something. It's a lot of movie. I'll say that.
Okay. I was imagining like Bling Ring, but like not all white girls. But I mean, hey, either way, I'm excited to check it out. And I think that's May 7th.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the next thing. Basecamp Studios, an art collective, is buying a 7-story building downtown and they're going to make 1- and 2-room residencies for working artists, plus providing studio space. And this is maybe silly, but their little apartments are going to have balconies. I feel like I would be insufferable if I had access to a balcony.
Why would you be insufferable? Hold on. What are you doing
all
on the balcony?
I don't know. I just be on there all the time. I feel like I would be like people watching and doing annoying little, I don't know. I think I'd just be out there and live my whole life out there. So, okay, this building is on 3rd Ave next to the McDonald's, if you know. So Basecamp Studios already has 2 buildings downtown. There's one in Bellevue. They've got another one on 3rd, which is just a few blocks north. And they're calling this new building project Parnassus because that is where all the muses hung out on Mount Olympus, which I really, really love. Would you all live in a arts residency building with balconies? Clearly, I know
with
what my
the
answer is.
balconies. I think yes. I also tend to think that like there should be art spaces just like more generally throughout the city. So any sort of thing like this. I also know, because is it that you have to pay any sort of rent, or is it entirely that you don't have to worry about that component of it?
I am not sure.
I got to assume it's like heavily subsidized.
Yeah. And so I think that's the valuable thing of if you can, because the thing I think about a lot with artists and filmmakers or folks I've talked to is you certainly can work and do all the things to get by, but you need time in your day and in your mental creative capacity to spend time not just doing the art, but thinking about the art, reflecting on the world and how you want to express whatever it is that you're making about it. So I would say yes, but I also
being around other artsy
yeah,
people
it's a good
and
vibe.
like sitting on your balcony and talking about art with people. I think that's what I would want to do.
Yeah, I'm into that. I interviewed this guy recently who's in his 70s. He's like a Baroque flautist, and he was regaling me with when he was like just out of college, he moved to Paris and he was living in these apartments on the Seine that were just filled with all these international artists, and he was a flute player and the other person was like a harpsichordist, and they were all just like living in prime French real estate and like hanging out. And I was just like, dang, I really missed the boat on on all the cool stuff.
Not if we move into these artist residencies.
I mean, it's not going to be this Third and Pine, not the Seine. But
what do you mean, Natalie?
hey, look, it's not as bad as the Seattle subreddit wants you to think. But
so true. I do wonder, though, if I think part of what makes that corner feel, the way that corner feels is that there isn't much else going on there besides McDonald's. So, I mean, it might be cool to have more people actually like living next door and that area of town just being somewhere that people actually spend more time instead of being kind of transient through there, like taking a bus or
yeah, isn't it like the eyes on the street concept? Isn't that like a Jane Jacobs thing? Like urban design, people being around. Anyway, sorry, cut you off.
No. I anytime anyone brings up Jane Jacobs, another great Jane, I'm very game. So, all right, last thing on my list, Chase. There's some documentary out about a guy who stole a plane. Did I just miss this? When did this happen?
I was going to say, did you not remember this? This was a big thing. Okay.
When was this?
There was this worker who planned and successfully took a plane with no one else in it, thankfully, flew it around for over an hour while talking with air traffic control, and then proceeded to do a barrel roll and then presumably intentionally crashed the plane. And it made national headlines. It was a big deal. And people were trying to figure out why, how, so many questions. And I think this documentary gets at some of the why and some of who the person was that took it. It is a controversial still subject in many regards about how it was covered. He ended up being kind of claimed by these hateful groups because of a comment he made about how he wasn't going to get a job as a pilot because he's a white guy, which the film grapples with. It's an interesting one. It's currently on Hulu. And I don't know. I think it will reopen conversations about how he became this sort of online figure that a lot of people connected to and related to. This will kind of be the full comprehensive bring you up to speed type of documentary that I hope people kind of engage with and reflect on.
What year did that happen?
Was it 2018?
Jeez, was it really that long ago? Oh gosh.
I think I was in college here and I remember following it.
It was 2018. Yeah. I still remember that night and people were actively listening to or posting audio from him talking about it. And so there's part of it that is like, this was a spectacle in some regards. It was a high-profile theft of a plane in a way that I don't think has ever really happened in American history quite like this. And people had a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts. It came at a very specific time, and I think I still remember for weeks people were talking about it and were having their reflections on it. And so I think with the benefit of time, as the dust has settled, it allows kind of for a greater reflection. I don't think this will be the final word on it in terms of like what it meant. But yeah, it was a big national spectacle. And I think the documentary kind of tries to move beyond that and say, well, this was a person with their flaws, with their complicated struggles. And this was kind of what they became known for. But who was he to the person that knew him, his family, his coworkers who get extensively talked to? What is the legacy of it now? almost a decade later. It's an interesting one. And I had spoken to the filmmaker, and she was very candid about the different approaches, the different decisions, trying to do justice to the full picture of it without shying away from anything too much. I'll be curious what you make of it, Jane, especially someone who had no sort of connection to
I don't know how I missed this,
Yeah.
but I was definitely here at the time, and maybe watching it will jiggle loose some memories that I'm like, oh, maybe I did hear about this and I just have not stored any of those memories. But okay, thoughtfully done. And
it is still a tough watch at times because it is about the end of a life. And even as like there are certain moments where you're like, okay, it's kind of engagingly made. It's like true crime adjacent in a way I imagine folks will have lots of thoughts about and I think is worth interrogating. But at the end of the day, you're still watching what were the final moments of a person through reenactment, through the dialogue. And I think that's not always the most fun thing, even in this true crime world where everything can become content and everything can become just a streaming event.
Yeah.
It cuts right to, I think, some of the more tough, maybe not always cleanly answerable questions about what happened.
What you're saying is it cuts to the chase?
Sure, yes.
All right, that's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. Chase Hutchinson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Natalie Graham, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Y'all should go check out Natalie's writing at The Stranger if you haven't already. I can almost guarantee you've probably already read something by her.
When is Playdate coming back? Who said that?
Oh, true.
So eventually. I have to write about the courts.
Yes. I do feel like the two poles of Natalie's existence, Playdate, which explores all sorts of fun new experiences in Seattle, and then
Just news.
courts coverage. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Jane Sihu. Before we go, I wanted to give a special thanks to Alice H., who just became a CityCast Seattle neighbor yesterday. You can be like Alice and join us at membership.citycast.fm/Seattle. We also love hearing from you all. Send us your news tips, your questions, your hot goss, your thoughts about the Supreme Court candidates, potentially. Send us an email at seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. Until next time, see ya, Seattle. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. Also, leave us a little review. It's really helpful. And tell your friends about us. You can also get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. And you can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at CityCast Seattle, and you can watch full episodes of this show on YouTube.